As we endlessly debate whether the 4-year cycle is over, many are still looking for a Bitcoin super cycle ahead, pointing at the incredible level of institutions, banks, and governments that are either accumulating assets or passing favorable legislation and regulation for the industry. The United States is no exception. Obviously, with the government reopening, we have the tailwinds returning for the crypto industry. Bitcoin super cycle ahead, or is the top it? Let's go.
Let's go.
Good morning, Thursday, faithful, and welcome to Bitcoin and, of course, the bullshit with myself and Yago. Man, there's a lot more Bitcoin and a lot less bullshit at the moment, actually, which is kind of nice. But we still have some of the latter all around the world. But let's first focus on what I would say is some positive news. We obviously have the government reopening, which means that crypto is back on the docket, both with the regulators and with the lawmakers. We've discussed quite a few of these things this week here already, so just want to touch on them. But we have bipartisan legislation being floated in the Senate to largely move crypto regulation to the CFTC, which is something certainly in the Gensler era that the crypto industry deeply wanted because they viewed the CFTC as a more reasonable regulator, less staffed, I think, less aggressive. Well, now actually from the other side, we have some really interesting news here. So SEC Chair Paul Atkins unveils plan for token taxonomy to redefine crypto regulation. They're looking at basically putting all tokens into one of four buckets, from what I can understand. There's not that deep of reporting on this, but payment tokens, utility tokens, commodities, and securities. So effectively, only the latter would probably really be the purview of the SEC. So even the SEC now effectively saying, once we get this taxonomy, if I'm reading this right, most of this is going to fall to the CFTC.
Yes, that's right. And look, this is not a new idea. Even back in 2017, we started to see countries that wanted to encourage the development of the crypto industry within their borders adopt a similar type of taxonomy. And basically, Atkins is borrowing from their ideas. So it was a lot of European countries, some Central American countries had this taxonomy of payments, security, and utility. Sometimes there was a mix between payments and utility. And then what the SEC is here introducing is a new component of that, which is commodity, which is basically what Bitcoin fell into across all of these different regimes, and was non-regulated. So this, I think, is very encouraging. It means that the majority of these assets, the vast majority of these assets, will not be considered securities. Clearly. That is going to allow a lot more free trade, a lot more borderless transactions. Is going to allow people who usually aren't allowed access to trade in securities because they're not, so-called qualified investors. They don't have enough money to qualify under US law to be engaged. It comes with all of the disadvantages of opening access, right? So you can have more scams and less reporting. But the industry itself, the crypto industry itself, I think has matured a great deal over the last 10 years. And people are expecting more mature projects. They're expecting greater disclosures. They're expecting greater investor protections anyway. And so what we're seeing in real time is the evolution, on the one hand, in the crypto space, of people figuring out how to use the free market now that they've finally, had over the last 10 years opportunity to experience it. And at the same time, the regulators backing down. This is another, the other, I think, really important thing here is that this means that the SEC and the overall Trump administration are looking to introduce changes which would effectively be permanent or very, very hard to reverse, even under a change in the regime, or if Democrats sort of took power again.
I think that's part of it.
And Right. And what that does, besides, a lot of people think it's favorable for the for the industry and the actors in the industry, but it has a deeper meaning, which is it brings stability, right? You can start. The industry is not going to be lashed back and forth by completely arbitrary changes in the mood swings of politicians as much anymore.
And the SEC is much larger staff, arguably at least currently more political. The CFTC is very much more rule-based. They have a very clear mandate on the way that they regulate things. So I think that, to your point, if the Democrats come back in, or not even the Democrats, even a less favorable Republican regime, who knows, right? Whoever's running it, they're putting hopefully more structure in place to make sure that changes made now are not just like executive orders that can be overturned, right? Which also leads to the argument that we still need market structure, because it's still just regulation and not law, right? So we still need it to be based in law, which he says is coming. There's some really interesting quotes here, though, because he says this will be based on the Howey test, which everybody kind of poo-poos, obviously, because it's from the 1930s or 40s. But he says, in the coming months, I anticipate that the commission will consider establishing a token taxonomy that's anchored in the longstanding Howey investment contract securities analysis, recognizing that there are limited principles to our laws and regulations. But then he says, networks mature, code is shipped, control disperses, the issuer's role diminishes or disappears. At some point, purchasers are no longer relying on the issuer's essential managerial efforts, and most tokens now trade without any reasonable expectation that a particular team is still at the helm. So he totally gets it. He says, we're going to say what's still a security. Is going to say a lot of these started as securities, but evolved into something else, which kind of reeks of safe harbor from Hester Peirce, but it's still going to get weird.
I think, in a way, what he's saying is favorable, but I'm not sure he gets it, because how many significant projects no longer sort of rely on the managerial efforts, right? If you look at the biggest coins, even, right, XRP still requires managerial efforts, Solana still requires managerial efforts, Tron still requires managerial efforts, BSC, BNB still requires managerial efforts. So in reality, I think, to the extent that securities laws was designed in order to mitigate the imbalance of information available to the people who are purchasing the securities and the people who are managing the securities, none of this addresses any of that. The SEC have completely failed at that from the beginning of crypto, and one could argue since before that. But just from the perspective of free markets and having a more libertarian view on what makes successful markets, if we can get the SEC out of this, because their involvement has been absolutely horrendous,
atrocious,
and they've protected no one from anything. So,
I mean, he goes on to say, fraud is fraud. This is not meaning lax enforcement. It just means that we're defining it. And I think those are the right things to say, because, the fraud from a Nigerian prince emailing you is no different than fraud from crypto or fraud from a Ponzi scheme, Madoff. So fraud is fraud, and that's the SEC's job. What I find interesting here, you kind of brought up Ethereum. I was joking right as you were kind of saying that people to some degree are always going to look to the Ethereum Foundation or see what they're doing or what they're building. XRP, I got into, the usual argument with the XRP army. And I was like, what's the main pitch right now? And they would keep showing me Brad Garlinghouse literally tweeting XRP is central to everything that we're doing. I'm not saying being a security is bad, but by this definition, the CEO is telling you what he's going to do to make the asset appreciate into the future. I think the real question is, why is being a security so bad? Or could there just be levels of it? It's the fact is that they've weaponized the idea of being security against the industry. So now nobody wants to be a security.
Yes. And to the extent that they've done this without actually achieving benefits or protections for anyone. Fundamentally, I think the SEC have failed in regulating crypto. And to the extent that we can get them out of the business of regulating crypto, it's to the benefit of everyone involved.
Speaking of which, I think we have an XRP ETF launching today, which I think I don't know how it'll do today. I don't know what it will mean for underlying XRP, but having interacted quite frequently with the XRP army, I think this thing should do quite well, Because right now, right, isn't mostly crypto just trades on Lindy? You know, like we kind of just you get the effect of the crowd and they buy and they're excited, and that breeds more buying and excitement. I think this thing should do quite well. Solana's done well, the ETF.
Yeah, it might do. Hard for me to say. Certainly, I think sort of the trad investor, like the traditional investors, I don't think are heavily in XRP, but retail investors who like sort of trad things that feel trad, they are the ones who are heavily in XRP, and so they may very much enjoy an ETF. I think some of the biggest news coming out of the US right now is Donald Trump's 2000 stimmy package, $2,000
helicopters
stimulus
outside my house. I can hear the helicopters starting to gather out there.
So I don't, we don't really have any news on this except for Trump saying that he's going to do it and Besant trying to walk it back. But this is very, very big news in my view, if it goes through, because it's a massive stimulus, similar in magnitude and in order of the stimulus that was introduced under Trump for COVID, right? Under COVID, every family or every individual got $1,800. Here it's $2,000. It is estimated that 10% of that flowed into Bitcoin and crypto. In fact, Coinbase at the time, for example, were reporting that they suddenly saw an uptick of people smash buying exactly $1,800 on exactly the same day that the checks went out. So
it's so nuts. I remember when the Republican pitch was fiscal responsibility, and they still say they're fiscally responsible while at the same time floating $2,000 stimulus checks. The smoke and mirrors of our government on both sides is just astounding to me.
Well, I don't think there's any party which is in favor of spending less. You don't get voted in by spending less. You get voted in by spending more. It's just a question of how you're going to spend it. I think the great trick of the Republicans is they managed to do it while still claiming that they're the party of fiscal responsibility. It's a cool narrative. Whether or not this will happen, I don't know. But if it does happen, it's extremely big news and could kick off a wave of retail excitement on the order of GameStop, crypto and 2020, 2021 boom again. So, unfortunately, it's your tax dollars, your government in debt, but everyone in the world is involved in Bitcoin.
I'm fiscally responsible. I have literally no idea what you're talking about. I mean, but you kind of alluded to the fact that the United States leads, right, in all of these things, and people tend to follow. So this is not the biggest country in the world, but Taiwan lawmaker pushes government to consider Bitcoin strategic reserve. As I dig into it, it's probably like one random guy in one random place showing a bill, and we jump all over it. But we did have Kazakhstan saying they're going to steal $1 billion worth of crypto from their citizens to start their strategic Bitcoin reserve in the spirit of the United States. But this is already gaining momentum and traction, even though the United States hasn't technically bought any Bitcoin or passed a law about this. Of course, we do have an executive order, and we do have the government, I won't say stealing, accumulating from criminals in other jurisdictions that have nothing to do with us, a Bitcoin reserve. But this is happening.
That's right. Look, Farage in the UK introduced a bill to Parliament, and he's
back, right? He's back.
He doesn't have a great deal of power in Parliament right now, but the Reform Party in the polls is the leading party, and were the polls to happen today, would dominate and become likely the next government in the UK. He's pushing a bill to do two things: eliminate taxation on Bitcoin and Bitcoin transactions, and introduce a Bitcoin strategic reserve into the UK. And at the same time, another country which did something similar, the Czech Republic, a year ago introduced law which was that should you hold Bitcoin, if you become a hodler and hodl your Bitcoin for 3 years or more, you pay no capital gains taxes in the Czech Republic. That's already established law for a year now. And their central bank recently announced that they had purchased $1 million worth of primarily Bitcoin and crypto, which was stable coins, as part of a pilot program to learn about how they can purchase, hold, and manage crypto assets, with the ultimate goal being that they could potentially then choose to add Bitcoin to their reserve.
I mean, they're not the only people that are looking at Bitcoin. We got 61% of institutions plan crypto allocation boost into Q4. This is very like oddly specific timing, like immediately. It's just another report, but I think it just speaks to the same thing, is that we have this clear accumulation of crypto assets, clear interest still in the class. And I think maybe the bigger story is this blip in price action is not in any way stalling that anywhere. Governments, institutions, none of them. We don't have a single report that even like our spastic retail crypto Twitter community saying it's all over, bear market, 4-year cycle, it's finished. You don't hear any of that from any major institution or serious player. They're all like, oh, cool. Prices are cheaper. Let's go.
I think you and I, Scott, should create the Supercycle watch, right? So I think, we spoke about this a little bit last week. My current sense of it is that the entire Bitcoin crypto world is holding its breath to find out whether or not we're still in a 4-year cycle. We're currently November 13th. The cycle should end within a month. Certainly by the end of this year. If Bitcoin's price is holding up in the new year, then we are in totally new territory, and no one, I think, will be able to still argue that the 4-year cycle is playing out at all as expected. And I think at that point, all bets are off, and we're into pure discovery.
Yeah, let's see. Supercycle watch. I love that. I had the Supercycle title, and someone's like, Supercycle. I saw it over in the comments. Price is going to go down today. Like, good thing the Supercycle wasn't based on Thursday, November 13th price action.
Well, I don't know.
It really is a window into like how on top of, and listen, part of that's our fault. Okay, I'm gonna admit it. Like I show up every single day and we talk about what the price is doing, and sometimes the title is like Bitcoin loses 103, will it hold 102? And it's like, yeah, I'm an idiot. That's dumb. Makes no difference. But we got to do something.
No, but it does. It has a real. I mean, look, no one can deny it has a huge psychological impact, and the markets are the aggregate of people's psychological activity and people's hopes and dreams and greed and fear. And if people fear, which they do, that we're at the very, very, the end of the 9th inning of the 4-year cycle, then people don't want to come into the market right now. And the price of Bitcoin having hit $126 today, being let's call it $3, 103,000, a bit of a difference, is encouraging to people who believe that this is, we're already past, we're already in the bear market, and maybe the bear market looks a bit different. Maybe it's a slower deflation, right? We usually see significant crashes in the price, but it doesn't disappear. Even in previous bear markets, the price doesn't immediately drop. It deflates. And so we might be deflating. We might be in a world where another 4-year cycle has come and gone, and we're already past it. We're into the next cycle number 6, and we're at the beginning of that cycle, which starts with the bear market. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that the 4-year cycle is dead, and that would be remarkable, because it would mean that nobody knows anything anymore. We don't know how to navigate this market, because we've been navigating this market according to cycles for the last 12 years. So we'll see. I don't know. Nobody knows. That's why the whole world is holding its breath.
Yeah, because if you believe deeply in the 4-year cycle and you read Reddit posts that predicted years ago that like October 6th was going to be the dead top, and then price hits the dead top at October 6th, superstition is it's a mother.
Yep.
Meanwhile, in the privacy arena, I have not looked deeply into Zcash. I'm going to be honest, but Rand Nooner made kind of the case for it to me, and I see a ton of interest in it. Well, now the Winklevi, that's plural for Winklevosses, backed cypherpunk targets 5% of Zcash supply with 58 million treasury seeds. So listen, we actually have had a pretty crazy stalling of digital asset treasury announcements, right? It was like 5 a day for 6 months. This is the first one I've even heard of launching in quite a while that we've bothered to report on, but focusing very heavily here on Zcash. I wonder if this is about the money, or is it actually a deep belief in Zcash as a privacy token? And to that end, then let's talk about privacy on Bitcoin.
Well, so before we get to that, I don't know what's going on with Zcash. It's been on a real rip. I don't know why. There doesn't seem to be a clear catalyst. The closest thing might be their decision to try and move to proof of stake. Do you have a theory on it?
My theory is that a bunch of people got together and were like, what's a really dead token we can buy a bunch of, and then create a narrative and say it's being built on and privacy is important and whatever. But listen, if they're going to pump something, a privacy coin is the best thing.
That's true.
I mean, if they're all making a ton of money, but like actually putting some sort of spotlight on privacy as an important aspect of what's happening in crypto, then I'm here for it. I missed it as a investment or trade so far.
You weren't part of the right alpha group. You went on the right WhatsApp channel.
But I mean, meanwhile, UK floats 20,000 stablecoin limit in tougher regime than US. So like, yeah, I can see why people would want privacy tokens. We had all kinds of news, the UAE with a digital dirham CBDC test. I mean, non-private government-backed type coins are coming.
I would like to see privacy built into more of crypto. I think that would be in line with the cypherpunk roots of why we've built out these tools in the first place. I think also anyone trying to spend small money to buy medicines or big money to do significant trades on an institutional level absolutely needs to have confidential transactions. It's obvious why governments have been pushing against it. It's less obvious to me why the value of privacy hasn't been more obvious to people who are in the industry up until now. As for Zcash, you're right. To me, this feels like very, very much a pump and dump. Some people were able to corner enough of the liquid supply to feel like they could, move the price meaningfully and then cash out. That cash out point has probably already happened about a week ago, or we're currently in the process of it. And the part that I hadn't thought about, which I really liked, is that he said, this is the perfect coin to do it with. The big problem I see with Zcash from a technical perspective is it doesn't really integrate very easily into anything else. And so it's not easy to, if there is no DeFi ecosystem, it doesn't integrate with Ethereum, it doesn't integrate with Bitcoin. It's cumbersome to move your other crypto assets into Zcash and out. And it's those entry and exit points which really are defining for privacy. So I think, the ZK technology that is at the basis of Zcash and that Zcash helped promote, incredibly important. Whether or not Zcash is going to be the primary sort of asset which benefits from it, I'm skeptical. I bought Zcash and have held and used it for almost 10 years now, 2016, I think.
Over Monero or both?
I've never been particularly fond of Monero, to be honest. I think it's got a great community, but I think the tech provides less, at least from a technical perspective, you get less sort of privacy assurances with Monero. But I think both are very good projects, have done important things, have substantially moved the field forward. I think what we're doing now with zero knowledge proofs is bringing them into Bitcoin. We're starting to see more use of them in Ethereum as well. And we're starting to see privacy being developed. And at the same time, what's happened with Samurai Wallet, what's happened with the Tornado Wallet dev has, I think, made it has had a very, very clear chilling effect. And so, we're going to need to hope to see or become sort of the kind of cypherpunks who can introduce technologies into this space without doxing ourselves, if we're going to want to see more privacy technology.
You just have to
become
dox yourself
available.
when you go in and out of it.
Yeah.
But
So
once you're in there, no, I was kidding. Yeah.
So that's one possibility. The other thing is we're in the process at Boss. We're in the process of building out the tools for confidential transactions with BTC natively on Bitcoin and across multiple different chains. But the way we're doing it is we're focused on building it in a way that will be useful to institutions. Because first of all, there's a huge need there. And second of all, if you can build it in a way that is useful to institutions, then it's very, very clear why that needs to exist. You're less likely to be hounded by the, feds for doing that. And that technology can also then be useful to individuals who need to, maintain their financial and economic privacy just as much as any institution.
Yeah. Listen, this was actually just announced today. I don't know if you saw it. Czech National Bank becomes first central bank to buy Bitcoin with 1 million test portfolio made up of crypto, stablecoins, and tokenized deposits. So there you go. Yeah. They're not even stealing it. They actually took 1 million hard-earned Czech dollars. What's the Czech currency? The euro? They're euro, I assume.
Not sure. No, I think it's the zloty. No, zloty is Poland. Czech.
I've been there too. I can't remember what it used to be, but I thought they were on the krona.
Krona, yeah. CZK.
Crown. Wow. See, I thought that we were educated people, but this is happening. But listen, I know we got to go in a couple minutes, but I've seen that there's been a pretty big uptick in like volume around BOS. Obviously, you guys are starting to gain some traction. So, I mean, maybe just talk about quickly, what's coming next. What would be?
Well, we've seen significant trade volumes over the last couple of days in the hundreds of millions. Growing activity across all metrics. Work
191 million in the last 24 hours. I'm looking at it right now. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's good days here at Boss. We've been seeing a lot of interest, strong development. Very, very early days, but very, very exciting.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's what we got. I got to run and go get on Sirius. Thank you, Yago. As always, people were asking if you were wearing a hex hat or a pulse chain hat.
This is Boss.
It's a BOS.
This is the Boss logo.
Imagine if you showed up in a hex hat, though. That would be awesome.
If someone sends me one, I'll wear it.
Just for fun. Why not? Huge supporter. Anyways, we got to go before we go down that rabbit hole. Yago, thank you very much, everybody. Obviously, give him a follow on X and check out Boss Bitcoin OS. That's all we got. Have a good one, man. Have a good one, everybody.
Thanks, Scott. Have a good one. Cheers.
What's up, Wolfpack? Scott Melker here, and today's show is powered by EasyBitcoin.app, the app that rewards you for buying and holding Bitcoin. Set up a recurring buy and earn 1% extra in Bitcoin automatically. Then let that stack sit tight and start earning a 2% annual Bitcoin reward dropped into your wallet monthly after a 3-month recurring buy streak. On top of all that, earn up to 4.25% on dollars you keep in your USD interest account. You can even opt in to have the interest auto-converted to Bitcoin. It's friction-free, set it and forget it, the best way to let you grow both your Bitcoin and your bucks. Easy Bitcoin is live right now on iOS and Android. Hit pause, click the link below, download the app, and start stacking sats the smart way. Your capital is at risk. Crypto markets are highly volatile. This content is informational and not financial advice.